short. Okay. Yeah, I'll start the webinar with a short presentation of technology assessment. And then my colleague, Samuel Osland is on call. He will take us through most of what we're going to discuss today. So could you please share the screen?
Yes. Do you have, Barbara, do you have a presentation?
Yeah, I have a presentation and Faith will share it.
Uh,
Just a very short presentation, won't take long.
no, of course. Thanks.
Yeah, yeah. Faith, can you kindly share the screen presentation? Yeah, so good morning, everyone, and good evening from wherever you are, and good afternoon. I'll once again say my name is Barbara Ntambrechi. I'm a researcher of the ETC group and also under the Africa Technology Assessment platform. And today's topic is very, very pertinent to us, and we hope to have more want to share more information about why technology assessment is very important for social movements. And I'll just begin by, sorry, just a second. One second. Okay, sorry about that. So Faith, the next slide. So what is technology? Technology, in many cases, what comes to mind is, high-tech digital objects, computers, smartphones, GPS systems, but not all things high-tech are actually, or digital are considered technology. And technology can be defined as a set of techniques brought together into a system and sustained over time, often in physical form. And that could include, basic items in our everyday lives. It could include intercropping systems. It could include fermentation processes. All this can be called technology. And technology, like you see in that picture, it can be a tool to solve problems. Next slide. So technology plays a very central role in our lives, and increasingly we recognize that the very technologies we rely on are significant contributors to a lot of crises that we face today: ecological crisis, collapse to deepening of social inequalities, and the solution and is increasingly being seen as a solution by influential governments, corporations, and institutions. Often, these are focused primarily on deploying new technologies as a key to addressing these challenges. So Please go to the next slide. Yeah, if you look at this slide, I wanted to say that, no, go back. Yeah, go back to the previous slide, sorry. Yeah, this slide is a good example of how, no, the slide with the, nope, the one with examples of digital tools. Next. Yes, that one. Nope, it's the one before, Faith. So anyway, the previous slide really talks about how digitalization is increasingly shaping Africa's food systems. And in this slide, you can see how technologies such as apps, drones, and automated machinery are being introduced to smallholder farmers. And in many cases, does not address their unique needs and contexts. So these innovations may promise enhanced efficiency and integrate farmers into centralized digital networks which are reliant on corporate control, corporate inputs, machinery, and financial services. So this picture actually gives you a context that, this shift raises concerns about food sovereignty and the potentially diminishing autonomy of smallholder farmers. So why we need to have tech assessment is that in our rapidly evolving digital and social landscape, it's more important than ever that as individuals, as communities and organizations, we need to cultivate our own critical frameworks and strategies to evaluate the broader societal, ethical, and environmental impacts of these innovations. So broadly, tech assessment is systematically evaluates emerging technologies to anticipate and prevent potential harms before they are deployed. And for it to be effective, it has to be participatory. It has to involve indigenous peoples, farmers, fisherfolk, who are often in social movements. And by conducting these assessments during the deployment or even after, but mostly during the deployment phase, it can influence research, funding priorities, and supports agroecological approaches by farmers instead of the corporate-driven digitalization of agriculture. And by doing so, we really empower ourselves to engage more thoughtfully and strategically about how we embrace new tools. We need to question their impact and challenge and resist potential harm. So developing this critical awareness about technology serves broader societal goals, promotes equity, and aligns with ethical considerations. And rather than simply perpetuating existing power dynamics and creating new challenges, it gives a better informed decision-making and when to embrace new tools and when to advance collective well-being, and also uplifts innovations to amplify positive change and when to challenge or resist and reinforce inequalities so that they do not perpetuate harm to communities. Next slide. Next slide, please. So for us to have a participatory approach to technology development, communities need to evaluate the social, economic, and environmental implications of these technologies that are being deployed. We need to promote the development of tools and platforms within social movements that enable monitoring and assessment to enable questions, criteria, and methodologies for technology assessments. And lastly, we need to promote grassroots innovations, learning from other communities that have proven remarkable use of technologies to innovate. Grassroots innovation enhances collaboration as a force to empower community. I'll stop here with these few remarks, and this just serves as an introduction to Samuel's presentation on technology assessment. Just to share with you all, this webinar is very, very participatory, and we hope that everybody will be able to participate when called upon. Thank you so much. And I hand over to you, Samuel. Please take us through your presentation.
Thank you, Barbara. And thank you, everyone, for having me. My name is Samuel Osland. I'm the Director of Agricultural Technology at the 11th Hour Project. And I'm going to do a very short just overview presentation. And then we're going to move into an exercise where we'll actually get a chance to explore two real examples of some interesting technologies and an opportunity for us together to do a little bit of a simulation of a tech assessment. So I'll begin with my presentation, and I'm going to probably skip a few slides here because I think Barbara actually covered a lot of this material. So please, if someone can just tell me if you can see my screen. Oops, starting at the beginning. Okay. Can you see the robot?
Yes, we
Yes,
can.
we can see.
Great. Thank you. Okay. So just picking up on where Barbara was speaking, the question for us, so 11th Hour Project is supporting really the development of technology for grassroots innovation and agroecology. But a key part of this is trying to, as we support new technologies or we support movements of farmers and organizers for technology, we we are aiming to really ensure that the technology is aligned with the needs of the communities that we work with. And so, as Barbara pointed out, a lot of the emerging innovation related to agriculture is really coming from very specific parts of the world, and it's brings in a very particular type of thinking about how technology should go and who should be developing it. And in many ways, that technology predicts a very linear, techno-deterministic future of farming. So farming is going from small scale to larger scale, to more automated, more high tech, and more digital tools. And so we're trying as much as possible to broaden that and try to understand other ways of thinking about technology and really trying to center the role of communities in developing their own technology. And so we are working very closely with grassroots organizations and farmers around the world that are developing their own tools and then trying to think about how to support these organizations in spreading and sharing their technologies. And Barbara kind of talked about this, but really thinking about the technology as we develop technology, there's a lot of unintended and consequences and things that we can't often foresee when we're making a new tool. And the plow, I think, is a very good example of that in terms of something that it really allowed for civilization level development, but also created a lot of issues around soil health and erosion of the environment. So when we're thinking about technology a lot these days, we're thinking about digital tools. Um, and even though a digital tool has this sort of sleek uh, facade, it looks like a something that which um, clearly, is a small thing. And they, oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting so many of these admin people. I hope someone else is doing that. Um, So the digital technologies, I think what we're trying to highlight here is just around the amount of impact and the sort of material consequences of these digital tools. So even as they seem sort of sleek and small and sort of very useful, and they are, they do have a consequence. And so trying to explore both the downstream and upstream impact of technology. And so in a lot of our thinking, just to touch on, this is a lot of work, so we think are being informed by. And then I just wanted to just come to this idea of thinking about technology in terms of how we shape tools and whether the technologies, if we're thinking in some cases where people think of a lot of emerging technology around genetic modification, right? And how those technologies in the environment require the environment to really take on the characteristics of the laboratory in which they're designed. And that's the way that they can succeed in the environment. And so they really perpetuate in many ways this sort of logic of that environment that they're being developed in. And so we're often trying to think about, well, how do we develop tools and technology that are more reflective of the cultures and communities that are going to use those tools? And I think open pollinated and sort of shared seed systems are a good example of maybe how we can try to mirror that in the way we develop technology. And finally, I just want to just think about this dichotomy between low and high tech. And often it's not so cut and dry because technology is rarely ever just one thing. And so we're trying to be more open in terms of what kinds of tools we're looking at. And so today, what I wanted to do, I'm actually going to stop this screen share, and we'll jump to another one in a moment. But we're proposing a bit of a framework that's quite pared back, just as a way to explore any emerging tool or even existing tools, and how, as a community, and as developers and technologists and farmers, we can actually look at how or whether a technology aligns with the values of the community. And so one of the ways we're doing that is through this little tool we've developed. And if you look at it, it's sort of like a flower, and it's like a target as well. So towards the center, we think it's closer to the goals. If it's further along that petal, it's further away from the goals. And so the idea is we ask some questions related to power, resources, impact, sort of the assumptions, and the root of the technology. And so, just to give an example of that, when we talk about power, we're looking at a new technology. We can ask, in what ways does this technology either distribute or consolidate the power in the current system? When we talk about resources, we can ask, what are the obvious and less obvious resources the technology requires? So that's looking at like a cell phone and thinking about the minerals that it requires, the data centers that are required to allow the information to transmit between, to be held in the cloud, and all that side stuff. And then when we're talking about impact, we have to ask, what's the potential social, environmental, economic, and political impact? So there's a lot of interrogation we can do with any technology and try to understand what the intended impact is, but also what maybe other impacts are maybe less revealed. And then I think there's also this question of assumptions and intentions, really. So what is the intention of the person or the company or the group that has put that technology together? And is it based on faulty assumptions? So it's really an opportunity for us as we're looking at the tools to try to understand a little bit whether it's based on some kinds of premises that which are in fact not accurate.
Toutes ces technologies sont
And
basées
then I
sur des
guess the
promesses,
other
fausses
thing
promesses, ou
we're
bien
looking at often is
l'autre chose, surtout les origines, quelles sont les questions principales? Est-ce que c'est les
another problem. And I think a good example of that might be um, looking at a tool that, like a digital tool that is there to support tracking your, like if you had a tractor, for example, support tracking your tractor in sort of um, measuring time that you're using it or where you're on the field. And now I think on the one hand, that could be supporting the farmer, but at the same time, it could be tracking your information. It could be sharing that with the company, and then they're using that to maybe try to sell something to you later. And so in some ways, it sort of entrenches that dynamic where the farmer is being more and more pulled into a system that doesn't really favored their own sovereignty in this case. And so that's sort of the end of the presentation. I wanted to just leave with this image of this is an ice stupa in India, and I think it's an interesting example of a thinking of technology in a more broad way. And here in this region, the glaciers are melting, and so they're having difficulties with the farming season and water. And so what they're doing is they are collecting lots of brambles and bushes around in the warm season. They stack them up, and then they use in the cooler season, they get the water from up on top with pipes, and they have it go down through gravity, and then it actually feeds out and sort of sprays water, and it creates these sort of, they call them ice stupas or temporary glaciers. And then over the course of the dry season, they actually melt and they irrigate the fields that way. So I think it's one example of a really interesting way to think about technology. So I want to jump from here very quickly, or pause actually. I think, why don't we pause here, Barbara? And I think we said we'd do some questions and then go to the exercise.
Yeah. I'd like to open the floor for any questions for Samuel, any reflections, questions before we go to the next activity. Any clarifications? Go ahead, Leonard. Tuakali, please go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Thanks a lot. Thanks for the wonderful presentation for you, Barbara, as well as for the just finishing present as well. However, I just had a current interest from the last picture, which we're just trying to explain about how some kind of technologies that are being trying to be implemented in some other areas. I think could be maybe if not if I didn't get it well, but should it be India? Is it? So they are trying to get water from the underground, then they freeze it, and they use it to get some the fuels. Did I get it right on that aspect? Before maybe I continue with my question from there.
Yes, well, not from underground, and I'm sorry, I rushed through that presentation very quickly. And it's a bit early here where I am, so I'm just waking up, so I do apologize for rushing. Uh, no, the water is coming from rivers further up on the mountain, and they're using pipes to and gravity to channel the water down, like, and then they run the pipe back up, and so the gravity the gravity feed allows it to produce the like a irrigation or sprinkler like effect, which then freezes.
Oh, okay, yeah. So maybe I just wanted to get an understanding of the reason behind the freezing itself. Is it maybe for to keep it for some other time to use? And also, if that is the case, how maybe if we can to quantify about the volume of maybe water that is trying to be collected throughout this through using that kind of system. Maybe do you have any way of how we can quantify that, and then maybe the kind of area might be that one could you use maybe for kind of irrigation and some sort of maybe. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
oh, sorry, go Barbara, do you have a
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
it's a really good question. I think in this particular example, they're producing a number of these around the sort of the villages, and I'm just going to share my screen for one moment to zoom in on this. Um, if you look, further back, you see there are these little white, and these are religious shrines, and the the stupa in Tibet, and this is in India, but in Nepal is a religious shrine for Buddhists, and so the stupa in this case is reflecting a little bit like the design is a little bit related to the cultural aspects of that particular religion and region. And so they're placing these around like all across the region. And previously, a lot of the water came from the glaciers. So now, as the glaciers are receding, there's less and less water during the season. So the goal of building these up and then allowing them to be used is basically supplementing what used to be glacier water. And so these are more like temporary glaciers. In terms of the mass, I think the design of it allows um, in this sort of shape allows for it to actually melt slower because there's less there's surface area, but there's less exposure to it's sort of it's being more and more concentrated in the cone shape. And so I think that's one of the thinking. I'm not sure about the exact amount of water that each of these holds, but I could look into it. I think they vary because they're all quite unique in each one that gets built. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Okay, there are a few questions in the chat, and I'll ask Bernard. Bernard, your hand is up. Can you please go ahead?
Thank you, Barbara and Samuel for that presentations. They are really very good, and I really appreciate, particularly on the emphasis that the end user or the grassroots is supposed the person to partake the technology. But in most of our setups or systems, the people who partake this information mostly are the service providers or the technical teams employed by government or NGOs. So the partaker or the investor who is the smallholder farmer or groups, sometimes it has not been very easy to get this information on ground. Maybe you'll expand there a little bit further, how these technologies can reach these people on the ground. I'm talking from a point of knowledge that I'm a representative of the smallholder farmers in Kenya. And in most cases, wherever we go, we find that there's a gap between the technology being proffered and the partakers. So maybe you can help us understand how best we can do this so that the farmers or the groups, the grassroots teams that are supposed to, this technology intended for use, are the ones using it and helping them move forward. Secondly, it's not a question, it's a request that maybe the slides at the end of the presentation, you can also share with us through our emails or through AFSA so that we get them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bernard. Samuel, you want to try, or I should answer?
Why don't you go ahead, Barbara, and I'll build on what you say.
Okay, sure. Thank you very much, Bernard, for that very important question. And it's true that on the ground, most of the technology that's being deployed is not adequately introduced to the consumers of this technology, especially smallholder farmers. And as ETC Group and AfriTAP and AFSA, we are now on the path to have technology assessments with the local communities. For example, we intend to have technology assessments in communities in Kenya, where we will directly interface with the farmers, with the village, with the VBAs, with the local communities, and ask important questions about how this technology affects them and how this technology actually helps them or it's actually affecting them. But the need to have concrete, urgent conversations on how technology is being deployed in Kenya is really, really important. And that's something that we are going to do. Actually, for your information, we intend to have these discussions next week. So your question is very pertinent. But just to share that this is a tool that would like many civil society and social movements to embrace and to ensure that our communities are part of the development of technology. Technology should not be a one-size-fits-all. It should be developed in partnership with farmers, and it should be farmer-centered, and it should have the voice and the participation of farmers in the development and deployment of technology. I hope that answers your question, Bernard.
Thank you very much, Barbara. It has really answered me and helped me to understand that actually there's something going on, and you are meeting over the same, and you are going to be very as inclusive as possible to have this technology transfer reaching the intended people.
Yes.
Thank
Samuel,
you very much.
Yeah, Samuel, do you want to add something?
I think you really covered it, Barbara. Maybe what I'll just go to the questions that I'm seeing in the chat.
Okay.
I'll read it out and then I'll just answer from
Sure.
from the few that I'm seeing here. So I see a question. Do you have any tools to conduct or publications that better explain the assessment process we're doing? From Bruno Ganzo. And Bruno, yes, to both of those questions. And I think we're going to stop right after these questions and actually jump into a practice assessment, which we'll be trying to share a publication of that in the near future. So the next question is, how participatory approach in technology can improve social economic well-being, and how can it support reduction of poverty? And I think from the participatory, so there's the assessment side, but there's also the tech development side. And I think one of the issues that with a lot of technology is that it's being developed perhaps in San Francisco or somewhere in the US or somewhere a lot of the tech innovation at the moment is coming from very specific places and a lot from the global north. And a lot of the value that's created from those technologies goes back to the global north, even if the technologies are being used around the world. And so I think one of the opportunities with participatory and community-led innovation is finding ways to actually have the value of innovation captured in the community and held and owned by the community. And so I think looking at local innovation ecosystems, supporting grassroots innovators, a lot of the innovation we support is open source, so communities are open to sharing it freely with their peers and with their farmer networks. But in some cases, I think there's an opportunity if a farmer has developed something and they're interested in turning it into a product or commercializing it. I think there are avenues where you can support that, and that can create more economic opportunity in communities where possibly someone develops a different push weeding device, right? And then maybe they're a farmer, but maybe they also can manufacture them, or they have a colleague that is willing to manufacture. Then they can sell those locally. And I think, yeah, there's opportunities there, but I think there's always that line between wanting to ensure as much access as possible, but also knowing that it takes a lot of work to develop these things. And so there are opportunities to support local businesses that can then enhance the local livelihoods of the community. And the other question here, what are the main challenges of participatory tech development? I think a lot of it's around, and this is from Martin. So I think a lot of the challenges around participatory tech development are related to just resources. It takes a lot of time and energy to make tools. And I know most farmers are actually very innovative on their farms. They're always developing things. But it's hard for a technology, once it's been developed on a farm, to share and be passed through other farms, because often many farmers don't even think what they develop or create on their farms is innovative. They're just solving a problem. So they just think of it more as, I figured this problem out and now I'm moving on. But some of those tools could be very valuable to their colleagues and peers. And so it's finding ways to identify those, support them in improving the design or adding to it or modifying it for different contexts, and then getting those out into the world. So those are some of them challenges, I would say. Approaches you can use to include grassroots women to benefit from the technology. I think this is a really excellent question. And we're working with an organization in Ghana. It's called Queen Tech, and they're working. It's led by Deborah Opando, and Deborah is a technologist and works closely with Ghanaian women in developing tools specifically for women. So she does a lot of post-harvest processing technology, like presses and graters for cassava. And so that's one really good example where I think when you have the community involved in the process, so in this case, Deborah is working with women farmers, and they're kind of involved in the process, and they've done a great deal of effort to ensure that the technology really meets the needs of that community. I would like to maybe pause here, and I'm seeing some really great answers also coming up in the chat, but we wanted to go through this tech assessment process together. And we can do that probably in 10 minutes, Barbara. What do you think about just pausing and going? Oh, I see a question from Sophia. Maybe Sophia, do you want to go ahead and then we'll jump to the next one?
Yeah, thank you so much, Samuel. Thank you so much, organizers, to this important meeting. Yeah, thank you. You answered my question about which approach can we use to make sure that these grassroots women, like what much of women we are working with, like Tanzania Media Women Association, TAMU, Zanzibar, we are working with, because we find that this technology is really important and we can't avoid. We are living with this nowadays. But we must think on how to make sure that these grassroots women, people in a rural area, as well as my colleague said, farmers, to benefit from this technology in a different way. Like as you said, there are socio-economical, marketing issues. There is a lot. So as people who have this kind of knowledge, we must come together and think how we can we can have approaches to make sure that we are not left someone behind. Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate to be a part of this important meeting. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sophia. I would love to just take a moment to go into, I see there's some, maybe another question, but if possible, could we hold on some questions? And we wanted to jump back into, because I know there was some interest in how are we using this tech assessment process. Then we'll come back and do some questions, I think, which should get to some, if it's okay. Barbara, can I jump into the...
Yeah, I think Shimel, I know you're from Israel, right?
Shmuel, we share a name.
Yeah, and his hand has been up, but is it a quick question, Shimel, before we go into the next session?
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much. I want to ask you what, according to your opinion, need to be a role of governments and authorities in encouraging participatory approach in technology. How, according to your opinion, authorities and government need support development participatory approach?
Thank you. Thank you, Shmuel. Barbara, if you want, I'll take a first.
Yeah, I think you can take a first step. Yeah.
Well, I think it's a really important question because there's only so much farmers and farmer movements and aligned organizations can do to actually advance participatory technology. I think we need, first of all, we need institutions and researchers and organizations like ProLinova, for example, in Africa, which is doing a lot of work both with farmers, but also trying to institutionalize participatory approaches. And that's working both at universities and extension services, but also working with governments locally to try to demonstrate that you don't need to be trying to attract technology and from abroad. You can actually support local communities who have the resources and knowledge and maybe lack some funding or maybe lack different resources, but they have a lot there and we can support them. And I think from a policy perspective, there's a lot that as we sort of can demonstrate the value of local innovation, I think we need to be bringing policymakers and decision makers into those conversations and to events, events that AFSA has and events that a lot of these farmer organizations are having to demonstrate actually, no, we have alternative technologies here, and we need to support in scaling out this approach rather than necessarily just the technologies themselves.
Yeah, thank you, Samuel. I think you answered it appropriately. I'll just say that what you ended by saying is like the heart of the issue, that we need our technocrats and policymakers to join us in these discussions, because most of the technologies that are being fronted on the continent are actually being pushed by our governments. And so there's a lack of awareness about the benefits of participatory local approaches to technology. And that's something that we intend to continue working on and continue raising awareness on. And so, yes, the government has a critical role in ensuring that we actually enhance grassroots local innovation. And we have seen time and time again that actually most of the innovations that are being developed are actually, are not high. I mean, the local innovations that we have are actually high tech from a community perspective and have worked very well for years. And so we need to, do better and have more conversation with policymakers and technocrats on the benefits of participatory local innovation. I think I'll stop here and ask Samuel that we go into the second part of the webinar, where we are actually going to practice and actually see how this tool works in practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. And I just wanted to ask, is this ending on the hour? This
No, we have another probably 30 minutes.
Wonderful. Okay, great. Okay, so we do have time. So thank you, everyone. And so I know I went through very quickly in my presentation. So we're gonna come back now and discuss a little bit this tech assessment framework and how we can use it to actually look at two different technologies in this case, and we can work on this all together. So often we would do this maybe with multiple groups, but we're going to try it as one big group. So bear with us if it doesn't work out perfectly, but we're trying it out all together. So as I was saying in the presentation, we've got this very simple framework which looks at sort of the power, resources, impact, root, and assumptions. And the goal is to say, well, if it's closer to the center, it's more aligned with our values. We have to articulate our values. In many cases, it's good to start there. And if it's further, then it's not aligned with our values. And so it allows us to just interrogate a technology very quickly. So again, some of those questions, and we'll pull those up and be able to reflect on those. But so it's looking at in what ways does the technology distribute the power, what assumptions are built into it, or what's the intention behind it? Does it address a root issue or entrench a problem? What are the social, environmental, economic, and political impacts? And what are the resources, both obvious and less obvious, required? And so the way that we've been working on this tool is we usually take two case studies and we work through them as a group. Now, I'll just show you in one of the ways we've been doing it is we will go down, we have a list of sort of case studies we can take. So these are some grassroots innovations. These are some more market and commercial technologies. And we grab those and we would bring them over here. So we'll have, say, one is first technology is one color, the other is another, the other technology is the other color. And in this case, we were doing this, my colleague Dana, who's actually on the call here. So we looked at Field View, which is a digital platform.
Would you mind going slowly, please, and speak louder?
But we won't actually do we have two different cases for our conversation today. But essentially, the goal is you take the technology, and as a group, you sort of ask questions. So you're looking back at this framework here of power, resources, impact, assumptions, and root problems. And what we do is we just ask the question, say, for impact. So if we're looking at this case of the farmer-led platform for crop planning. So we say, based on the information we have here, I'm saying like, oh, this technology seems to empower farmers. It's to simplify the organic certification process. It reduces barriers to accessing markets because that tool is for record keeping and sort of markets. And so we answer that. And so we can say, okay, that's maybe a good impact. And so from an impact perspective, it's got some good social impacts. So we're going to say it's closer to the center. But we might look at sort of the resource part of it and we might answer, actually, maybe it's, it seems to require a lot of, requires a lot of like understanding. You have to figure it out. So it's kind of technical. Maybe it's, running on the cloud. So it's not super accessible. So I don't know, you maybe would place it over here. And so the idea is to just go through and answer the questions sort of as a group, just be reflecting. And the way we'll do this together, I think, is we'll put comments into the chat, or you can just open your mic up and say what you're thinking. And then I'll try to write the questions down or your points down, and we'll kind of locate the technology. And you can just say, oh, I think that one is a good impact or low impact. And we'll experiment with that. We've never done this with a big group quite like this, so it might be chaos, but we're willing to experiment. By the end, though, of the exercise, in this case, we're going to do two different technologies. We get to a bit of like a graph almost emerges from the collective conversation. And that allows us to say, oh, that technology, in this case, in this example, right, it's getting closer to the center. So we can see that it's more aligned. And if it's further from the center, we're like, okay, there are some issues here. And so that if you're working, say, with a technology company or a technologist, that's good feedback for them to be able to say, actually, what you're producing is not going to be beneficial. And if you're a community that's looking to adopt a tool, It allows you to maybe make an assessment or a decision on that. And then usually at the end of these exercises, you can almost come up with a rating for yourself to say, actually, this community is far from being aligned, or this technology is, really not aligned at all. But this is some work. So you could actually make a recommendation. Well, if, you had better data protection policies, maybe this one would be more aligned. And so that's kind of the goal. It's really just to work through examples and tools, whether you're a community, if you're a technologist developing something, trying to be more rigorous in how we think about the different impacts of the tools. So I'm going to jump down. I think I have set up a little worksheet here, and we have two technologies. One is an automated greenhouse system developed by a co-op of farmers in Canada, and the other is an egg hatching machine. And so if Barbara's going to maybe give the overview of this one, I'll give the overview of the other one. And then that's where we want to just open it up to everyone and sort of work through it like a bit of a big collective tech assessment. But Barbara, maybe I'll let you explain.
Okay. Hatching machine. This is an egg hatching machine that was given to a farmer in Makueni. Egg hatching machine is also really an incubator. It's designed to naturally incubate. It's a natural process, by maintaining optimal temperature, humidity, and it turns eggs and to hatch poultry eggs effectively. And so some of the common features that an egg hatching machine would have was obviously temperature control. It uses an electric heating element by thermostats. It has a humidity control aspect where there's an automatic humidity regulation, and it ensures that the environment inside the incubator remains a proper hatching. And then it does the automatic egg turning, where the incubator has a mechanism that automatically turns the eggs at regular intervals. And then there's a digital display and control, where many models feature these kinds of digital displays showing temperature, humidity, and turning of frequency, and it allows for automatic control of these parameters. And then there's the second last aspect is that it has, it varies in size of an incubator and holds a few dozen eggs to large scale models, and it can hold several hundred or more eggs simultaneously. And the application of this is that it can host various bird eggs, including chicken, duck, and the machine automates and optimizes hatching environment through controlled heat, humidity, and egg using electricity, and significantly improves the hatch rates and efficiency in poultry farming. So some of the challenges of this machine is number one, that it really incurs a lot of electricity. The machine's reliance on electricity makes it vulnerable to interruptions, which can jeopardize the entire hatching process. And then two, the initial cost of investment and ongoing consumption might be high for a small scale poultry farmer. And then the technical complexity for a farmer, it has advanced digital controls, sensors, and may require a user training and can malfunction, causing operational challenges for non-expert users. I hope I was not too fast. Yeah, that's like a summary of what this egg hatching machine looks like. Samuel, over to you for the next one.
Thank you, Barbara. So the other technology we want to do an assessment on is a tool called L'Automate, and that's a French play on words from the French co-op in Canada, and it's for automating greenhouses. And in the context where these farmers are, it's quite cold, and so they really use greenhouses to extend their season. And so the tool is essentially both a mechanical and a digital tool. So there's the mechanical component, which allows you to roll up the sides. And that's the main way to regulate heat in this sort of greenhouse. So you open the sides, it allows the cold, hot air out. You close the sides, and it actually retains heat, and that's how you can sort of control the growing environment in this case. The other functions that it has, these are more digital, is it has sensors in the soil that you can put in, and it allows you to see if it's dry, and then you can turn on the irrigation. You can also sense the temperature. So, previously for these farmers, they would have to go and roll up the greenhouse sides. So because it's sensing temperature, it opens and closes automatically based on the temperatures that you set as what you want. So in terms of maybe a little more background, it's an open source tool. So the farmers developed it to be freely available in terms of the plans. So you can get the plans and build it yourself. But they also began selling kits to local farmers in the region that didn't want to develop or build the tool themselves. Some of uh, the plans, while being open source, you do need to have some sort of competency around mechanics, but for making the greenhouses, the roll-ups work, but also a lot of electronic and maybe programming experience to be able to, make the automation stuff work well. It's once you have it set up, it's easy to use, but it is working in a humid environment, and so it's electronics. They can break down. So there's some reliance on those parts and having to source them if they break down. I think some of the challenges beyond just knowing how to fabricate it or build it is that it does require electricity as well, right? You need to be connected, whether you could have solar panels or be connected into the grid. Another issue I think is just the cost. It's this particular tool was designed by these farmers because the existing tools on the market were just way too expensive for their needs, but they ended up building this, and so it was about 5 times cheaper than the available tool on the market. At the same time, it is still an expensive investment, and so I think that's a question about accessibility there. So with those two case studies in mind, what we're going to try, and bear with us, this is a first attempt at this in a big group. What we're going to do is zoom in on here, and just Barbara, if you could remind everyone of what those sort of axes, like what some of the questions were, I will take notes in here as people respond, and we can just start, we'll place these. So the first tool, just in terms of remembering here, the blue is going to be for the egg hatcher. The yellow is going to be for the greenhouse automation. And so I think we should just open it up if folks want to just respond to some of these or add what you think of these two technologies. So blue will be for the egg hatcher, and yellow will be for the greenhouse. And
Okay.
so, yeah, so remember the interrogation we were having was, so impact, what's the potential social, environmental, economic, political impact? Resources, what sort of the obvious and less obvious resources are required? Does it get to sort of what are the assumptions slash intention of the tool? And is it actually meeting a real need? Is the other one we want to ask. So does it increase sort of farmer sovereignty? So that's like in the power, or does it make you more dependent? And it is actually addressing a root cause for entrenching it. So please, does anyone have any like gut reaction or response to either of these technologies in terms of the like resources?
Yeah. By show of hands, we, like Samuel said, this is the first time we do it in a big group, and we can do this together. Yeah, so anyone has some reactions to Samuel's presentation of this tool? Just to remind you, when we're assessing the tool, we're looking at the power. In what ways does this technology either distribute or consolidate power? And just to remind you, it's either the egg hatcher and the greenhouse that was presented by Samuel. And then when we're looking at the root, we're looking at the root issues. Does this tool either reconcile or entrench, for example, does this make the farmer dependent, or it further entrenches the farmer into not corporate, but in this tool? Secondly, impact. What are the potential social, environmental, economic, and political impacts of these technologies? And then when it comes to assumptions, does this technology build on faulty assumptions and framings? Yeah, probably anyone else, anyone with a first hand?
What's your thought, Barbara, on the egg hatcher in terms of, we have one
Have a
from
hand.
Daud.
Yeah.
Please go ahead, Daud.
Mm.
And only.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. It has been a very wonderful discussions, and I really like it and how it's going. So one thing is that my background relies on horticultural sciences, and I would honestly say greenhouse technology is quite very, very I would say costful, and not so many farmers can afford it. So you see, it's a very good technology, but it's highly costful, and not many farmers can afford it. And when it comes maybe to these temperature sensors and also to the soil moisture sensors, they are very, very expensive to maintain and even to regulate. So it's not that easy that a small farmer can run his or her own greenhouse, especially with this automated system. It's a good technology, but it's quite costful. When we look at the, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk of the egg hatcher.
Yes, please.
Yes, you see, the technology itself, despite even if it can be somehow expensive, but it solves the problem of the farmer, especially when we know that hatching is a quite challenging. Just right now, we don't have really so many farmers who are doing a normal way of hatching that can be done by chickens. So it has just replaced the work that chickens had been doing by doing it multiple more with multiple effect. But it's something that even a male farmer who can also adapt a technology with some subsidy or some his or her own funding, they can also purchase, even maintain the egg hatcher more than automated greenhouse. So you see, the two technologies are there, but one of it has its own benefits and not benefiting much, is especially regarding to a small farmer.
Thank you so much, David.
One quick question then, where would you, I'm gonna maybe, and we can just do this together, but for this one on the accessibility, so I think I'm putting this probably like around here because it's actually, although it's expensive, it does actually solve a real problem. And so I'm like in access here. So I go, okay, that's good. It actually solves a real problem. Then it's allows the farmer more control. It's useful. So I'm saying that's also quite useful. And then from the greenhouse tool, it's expensive. So I'm saying maybe it's from an assumption, it's a useful tool, but it's actually not perhaps addressing a real problem for the local farmers. And then in terms of resources, it's expensive. The tools break down, so we're actually going to say maybe it's less useful in this case. Does that sound good?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, we have. Oh, okay, sorry.
Oh, please go ahead.
Yep. This another hand. We have Bernard Wabunge. Bernard?
Thank you, Barbara and Samuel, for sharing the two technologies, which is very good and critical, particularly at the grassroots level, to have farmers or grassroots users with the technology at their disposal. That's very important. Maybe what I can cite on the incubator, despite the power outages and challenge, I will also request that maybe we include the power backup in the event that maybe another source of power should be availed in the event that the electricity connectivity is not available or is going to go off. Maybe we look at the direction of the green energy sources like solar to be interconnected with the main grid. In the event that the main grid is not functioning, then the solar takes over and there's no much wastage on the hatchery. Thank you.
I love
And
that.
yeah,
love
so we could probably ask the question, Samuel, is it aligned to Bernard? You're still there?
I like the idea of an intervention of solar, adding solar. So you're starting to improve it. To me, I mean, that's on the resource side, but I think it's actually getting it closer. If you can make it so that it's not relying on external power, I think that's answering a few different things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other contributions? I'll just pick a few people and ask you to speak. Sabrina, are you on the call? Okay. I'll ask Ernest from Tanzania. Your thoughts?
Hi, Barbara.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for this very important session. I just wanted to say that this is a very important session, especially for the farmers in the villages. So I hope we will be having more of these webinars. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm seeing a note from Bruno Aganzo in the thing, which two really good points. So the open source is positive in terms of the sort of addressing a power issue, like an issue of ownership, and addressing a root cause because it's open source. So he's suggesting, okay, that's actually really good in terms of that side. And so we're actually going to locate it close to the center, I think, because open source is great. It's open, anyone can access it and freely do it. But then he also notes difficult for implementation can make it less accessible. And so it's sort of maybe a contradiction. And it shows the complexity there. And I love that there's sort of that distinction here. So I think we're also locating it. I would say this one maybe, and you can chime in, Bruno, if you feel that's so maybe there's an assumption or an intention. It's good, but it's actually maybe not addressing a real need, which is making it more accessible and affordable.
Yeah.
And
Bruno? Okay.
Any other interventions or thoughts on these two? Barbara, any other thoughts on your side?
On my side?
Yeah.
Well, I think with the my point was said that we could add the solar aspect to the egg hatching, but I also think that it can be complex for an ordinary farmer to navigate the digital controls, and so that may be difficult to maneuver and may take time for the farmer to actually understand how to use it. So it requires a bit of learning. Yeah, it's a learning curve. Oh, Susan, please go ahead.
Thank you for this very good presentation, and also just process of thinking of alternatives. that can make the digital conversation much richer within communities and also accessibility. One of the things that you did mention at the beginning was how the digital process has not involved governments but needs to involve our governments. So I am thinking on the conversation around the power and the electricity, especially for the hatchery, and we see so many investors coming into the African continent in different countries and getting different benefits like lower tariffs on electricity, even wiped tariffs on electricity. And I think this is a perfect opportunity if something like this happens to engage government. So maybe we could add something there on bringing in the governments themselves and the tax authorities to be able to look into something like that, so that maybe the electricity is subsidized, and that makes it much more affordable for communities. And that's, of course, a conversation that happens between the communities and the electricity companies, and just generally reaching a point where the recognition of this of such an innovation is seen across the country, but also with the authorities, so they can buy into some form of subsidization in processes that would seem so expensive but are vital for the communities. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Suzanne, for that very important point. And I think it's a reality for many African countries with regard to reliable electricity. Most of our countries, electricity is not very reliable. And like the two examples are highly dependent on electricity. So the conversation with governments is an interesting one. And Samuel, I don't know what your thoughts are and where you have placed the sticker. Is it, yeah.
So I placed it in this sort of power because in some ways this current situation, it feels like it's actually the farmer has less control over this technology, right? Like they require the utility's, expensive, and so they have less control. But if, and so it's maybe not giving more power to the farmers in this case. And power in this sense being sovereignty, I guess is the other word. I saw there's a question or an intervention or a comment from Leonard, and I'm also looking at the chat. So please, Leonard, go ahead.
Yeah, no, thanks, Samuel, as well as Barbara. Yeah, on the egg hatcher, I was also looking at the aspect of population costs or maintenance costs, whereby maybe if the egg hatcher or some kind of any other guys put in there the kind of technology that has been as explained certain for the kind of operation costs or maintenance costs that could be associated with the technology could also have an impact in terms of the scalability of adoption by a number of users in the area or in the community. Even if the government or any other stakeholders could have an emphasis to scale up to increase the adoption of particular technology aspect. For this case, we can maybe use the case of the egg hatcher. So these associated costs could also affect the adoption as well as the scalability. So maybe if we can also try to take into considerations the maintenance cost of specific technologies that we intend to implement or try to scale up to farmers, so that those, whenever there are some faults, farmers themselves or anyone else could at least fix it or maintain it, but at a lower cost aspect of it. Or if it's kind of materials for maintenance would also be of high costs, then that could also affect the scalability as well as the adoption. So maintenance costs could also be taken into consideration whenever we are trying to promote such kind of technology as well. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Barbara, where would you put this?
Maintenance cost, I think root, right?
So this one, it's maybe a bit technical, so I think it would be maybe there. It's saying,
excuse me.
Oh, please.
Yeah, kindly. I would like to revisit again the solar item. Is it possible now the suppliers of this equipment to look at their designs to incorporate the user friendly for the grassroots people to scale to do modification to their designs to allow both to be used so that they become user friendly. That's what I'm trying to say. That because at the end of the day, it also depends on the supply of those electricity. Where some areas in our countries don't have the electricity grid supplied, so they may rely on solar, and it is important to have both designs carrying that help. If where there's power supply, well and good, and then the solar supply can also be incorporated. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernard. I'm putting that for both of them because I think both this idea of usability and like if it's super technical, I think it was similar. There's a question of resources, but also usability. And as we're doing this, I'm like, oh, maybe we need to adjust some of this framework to capture some of these other opinions. So this is actually helping us think about a little bit more about this differently.
Yeah. I think we could go to the chat. I'll read out Ines's comment. Ines says, it is essential to ensure that the technology, whether a greenhouse or an automatic incubator, addresses a real and priority need of farmers, as well as the demand of the end market. It must be efficient, easy to use, durable over time, and economically, just a second, and economically accessible. Implementation costs and the need for qualified labor must also be considered. As a technology that is too expensive or complex and can increase production costs, and consequently the prices of final products, reducing their competitiveness. So it should also allow for optimization of resources such as energy and water to minimize environmental impact and strengthen the resilience of farms. Finally, it is crucial to ensure that the possibility of local maintenance and the availability of spare parts to avoid excessive dependence on external support.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's brilliant. I'm just putting that as that's like a goal. We just need to have that front and center for everything else.
Yeah, I like the aspect of minimizing environmental impact. And optimization of resources. That's really, really important. We go to Chrissy Awali. Chrissy Awali says both technologies will maximize productivity or yield. The egg hatcher is a controlled environment, so there are high chances of hatching compared to the natural brooding and large-scale hatching, similar to the one of the greenhouse. High yield and pest and disease control. So I think we put it, I don't know, in the middle, because she says both technologies will maximize productivity, both the egg hatcher in a controlled environment and greenhouse. There will be also high yield and pest and disease control.
That's a strong impact, like a good positive, yeah.
It's a good positive, yes. And then Musandi Pamba says less obvious resources that should be taken into consideration relates to disposal of unhatched eggs, shells, and other organic waste management. So less obvious resources that should be taken into consideration relating to the disposal of unhatched eggs and other organic waste management. I think, yeah, that's part of resources. That's a positive. And then Sophia Ngalapi says the issue of advocacy on policy and regulations dealing with agriculture and technology. I think that's a power problem. Should be the power flower, I think we call it that. And John Wilson says, I can see this tool being very useful in many specific situations, a bit difficult using it in a general way, as often the assessment depends on context. Nevertheless, the exercise is a good intro. Thank you. Musandi Pamba has also added to his comment saying, for the solar-powered incubator, security is key, especially for the panels and equipment. So there's an aspect of security being key for the solar-powered incubator. Exactly, that's resources. And then Jen Kenya says, I see the tech assessment as a tool for value addition through involvement of farmers and having their perspectives incorporated into future technologies. Thank you very much, Jane, for the comment. Yeah, any other additions that we could add?
It's interesting. I think definitely that less interventions on the, oh, Susan, please go ahead.
Yeah.
Just a quick comment on maybe also thinking about, because working within communities and within groups. So maybe thinking about if an individual farmer cannot have it, what is the capacity of that, say the that then there's the concerns around security, concerns around affordability of electricity and all the other services that need to be had is a shared responsibility. And that also will help in all the other, so some of the other issues that have been put forward.
I love that. What this is making me see is that we need a third sticky or another color almost as a recommendations.
Yeah.
Actually, like,
Yeah.
yeah. But that's a great.
As a community tool and a shared responsibility. I think that's an important point.
Yeah.
Any other reflections? We have about 10 minutes left. Okay. Oh, Leonard, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Babla. I was also just trying to look on the aspect of the kind of impact that the maybe kind of technology could have maybe in farmers or anyone in lives, which calls for the need to call for maybe a mail, is a monitoring and evaluation tool to assess maybe the economic, the social impact of such kind of technologies that being influencing maybe farmers' life. So having such kind of also as a separate tool to monitor as well as evaluate the kind of social as well as the economic impact on the adopter side could also be essential in terms of scaling up the technology. So I was just trying also maybe to think in those kind of aspect to really see the kind of impact that kind of interventions or different kind of interventions or the technologies that we're trying to bring out to the audience out there, and also to see the kind of impact or the milestones that we have managed to reach at a specific time frame in the farmers' lives. Yeah, I was just trying to think in that aspect as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leonard. We have two people. Bernard again, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Barbara and Samuel, for that work. I just going back to the cost of the equipment, and I think working in groups makes it easier. As my sister has said, it will be maybe very expensive for individual farmers who like go their own way. But if we invest in groups, either cooperatives or CBOs, the cost element will be reduced, and also it will be an advantage for marketing purposes because the products will be collected from these farmers as a group and then marketed. I think on the cost element, I think we can work it that way as a solution rather than believe we may not manage or afford to adopt the technology simply of the cost element. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bernard, for that. I think it's a positive, so it goes closer to the flower and aligned. Any more contributions? Okay.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So that was such a helpful exercise for us to get to try with so many people, and thank you for bearing with us as we experimented with it in a big group. Normally, it's a smaller sort of breakout groups. But I think just looking at this, are there any just reactions, like in terms of we've kind of collectively graphed these two technologies, and I think we've had some good feedback, right? It's not really accounting for some things. There's a lot of context specificity that we can't capture in this kind of a conversation. But any reactions just to the what we're looking at? My sense is that, well, it seems that the greenhouse tool was kind of put aside, but it was quite expensive. Note that many farmers maybe would not be able to access. And so most of them ended up on the edges of the petal. Great idea, but maybe not useful in this context. And then we had a lot of great feedback about the egg hatchery, and a lot of ways in which it's really well aligned. But then, issues where maybe it's not, but also opportunities for it to be improved. And I think that's what I was most excited to hear, actually, was some just really great ideas in terms of how to improve, and even thinking very differently about ownership. And then I think if you were doing this with a technologist, right, that could really help them in terms of their development model and how they're intending to develop it. So yeah, thank you all so much. I think that was a really helpful and fun exercise to do.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think finally we would just like to hear your thoughts about what you thought about the tool, any feedback in terms of usability, and whether there are ideas on how to make it more participatory. Any feedback? I think John, if John is on the call, you had an interesting comment, and maybe you could share more. Oh, he's gone off. Okay, Mamadou, I see you on the call. Your ideas, please.
Yeah, no, yeah, this has been deeply discussed for the different examples that have been presented, because I've been just living on my laptop and see. So, but the point that have been raised now, if you look at some of these technologies, so globally, yeah, I'm talking about those who have been presented, most of them very adapted to the local context, even though there is a kind of course, some of the cost issue, the issue of to equity access to some, even if they are available, access to it is a bit more complicated. So this is and the challenge is also how if you look at the Sahel country, for instance, on the tent issue, so it's a bit complicated because the life of this equipment are very short compared to the investment that people are doing on them. So it's still the challenge is not just the issue of the availability, but how people can not only access to it, but also create conditions for the local handicraft, those who are here just to also work on this. Globally, this is what I will be saying, that there are really very relevant instruments that if you look at the indicators of assessment that frame can allow just to have an issue of sustainability technically, because it's easy just to have control on them, to have power on these processes. Some of the material can be found also at local level. But if you see the kind of sustainability in terms of materials that are used, this can be a bit problematic. Mainly small scale farmers. So globally, what I can say is so this debate should continue to see how the issue of so equity on not only the accessibility but also the sustainability of this can be addressed. I think that is something that probably I will like to deepen a bit more. So globally, this is my thought on the specific issues. Since I've been jumping on out of the call sometimes, so I think that I cannot say more than that.
Thank you, Mamadou. That was helpful, and we've taken note of your suggestion. Just want to open just one more, and then we can close. One more intervention. Okay, I'll ask Samuel. Samuel, you can share your final remarks and closing. Thank you.
Well, I'm just very grateful to everyone for joining us, and really a lot of really interesting conversation. And I think what I was most excited about was just the feedback in terms of how a tool like this could also be used to collect feedback for improvements and changes, and that could actually prompt designers and technologists to work more closely with communities if they're developing a tool. And so that was how do we build that mechanism into this type of a framework? And then it really also just, I think, the feedback in terms of maybe some elements that we're missing and how we could improve this going forward if we're continuing to use it in these types of examples. So yeah, really a lot of gratitude to everyone for participating and for joining us and working through the bugs as we figured it out.
Yeah, thank you so much, Samuel, for a great presentation. Thank you to you all from all over Africa who are able to join us. Really, really impressed by the level of participation, and not just from, there's people from Dominican Republic. I found that very interesting that everybody was able to join us. Thank you so much, and for the rich discussions. And we will be in touch about the next webinar. Thank you very much.
Good presentation, Samuel. I forgot to say, good presentation, Samuel, from Mamadou.
Thank you, Samuel. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Samuel.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.